Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, and let me first say, Pragati, wow. What a last couple of days with build.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I have to say it because I'm sure that everybody is thinking the same. So what I would like for everybody joining us in the chat is just use the hashtag best build ever. Because there's been so much amazing news. And Pragati, let me just introduce you first. So obviously, this is my co-host Pragati Jain. Pragati, fantastic to be with you today.
Oh, same here, Leon. And definitely, I would ask all our team attendees to say what is the most exciting thing for them about Fabric. So please don't forget to write that down as well.
Indeed, indeed. Fabric is here, and it's taking over the world. It's arguably, in my mind, the best thing since even before Power BI. I'm sure since SQL Server. I run out of superlatives for it. But Pragati, what we did mention to everybody joining us is that we were going to have some big news for today's session. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you would, is just share your screen for us, please. I think you might have a bit of a PowerPoint deck. Fantastic. So I'll just bring it on. So hopefully everybody can see. So as you've all known, and hi Pedro, thank you for joining us. As you've all known, we have gone under the banner of the Microsoft Power BI UK user group for the last, I'm going to say it must be nearly 3 years now, Pragati. Time's escaped us.
Yeah, that's nice.
It has, and it's been wonderful. Power BI has been a godsend. We are now entering a new era of data in the era of AI, as Microsoft have put it themselves. So we would like to go ahead and do the reveal of your new UK user group. Yay!
Yeah,
And
Fabric you can use a group now.
exactly. We'd like to welcome you to the Microsoft Fabric UK user group. And with that being said, what I would like to do, Pragati, is introduce our first speaker under the new banner. So, Steve, let's bring you on screen. How are you doing
Hello,
today, Steve?
hello everyone. I'm super happy to be there and also very nervous because the build is still running and
Oh,
the
yeah.
fabric is all around. And we are here to talk about the calculation groups. Really?
But it's a fantastic topic that needs discussion. Believe me, there's going to be a plethora of fabric sessions coming over the course of the future, definitely.
And I think we'll still keep using calculation groups, right?
Hopefully we will.
I
Yes,
think
indeed, and potentially in desktop, if you've been following the news as well. So there's excitement everywhere. So if anything, Steve, with that announcement, I believe it's July that we're going to start to get that functionality. The calculation group session we're going to see today comes at a perfect time. A perfect time.
And
Excellent.
once again, I'm super happy that you've invited me here. So
pleasure, Steve.
It's our pleasure. What we'll do, Steve, is we'll let you get on with your session, and we'll be in the background. So thank you very much for joining us.
okay. So once again, hello everyone, and welcome on this session. It's a session about the calculation groups and their conditional formatting. Uh, Many times I've heard that calculation groups cannot be conditionally formatted, and also I'm encountering many often that people are scared of calculation groups. So hopefully, after today, you will not be scared of them at all, and you will be able to answer the question if they can be somehow formatted. Of course, they can. But let's jump into that. And if you don't mind, I would like to say just a few words about me. My name is Štěpán Rešl, but for everyone, I'm the Steve. So anyone you can call me a Steve, it's easier. I'm also one of the Microsoft most followed professional around the data platform, and I run the English blog called Data Meerkat. Definitely, I would like to stay with you all in a touch, so you can see here my LinkedIn and Twitter. But uh, of course, at the end of my session, you will be able to find them also. But let's start with something. Calculation groups, what they are and what or how they can really help me. They make it possible to create generic expression that will be applied against any input measure that you can possibly imagine, which is incredibly handy when we would like to reduce number of measures in our models, or at least downsize our work that we need to do to create repetitive steps inside other measures. And on the other hand, calculation groups can be also used for overridden the measures itself. Why would we like to do that? I will show you. So just have this simple line in our heads to be able to say what they are here for. Okay, let's start with three parts for what calculation groups are actually good. For first, they are reusable. We can use them as much as possible and as often as we need it. Of course, we have we also have some other part of a coin or other side of a coin where we can find the downfalls for that, but we will be discussing that, so it's completely okay. Still, let's stick with that they are reusable, and they really are. Also, they are formattable, and in two different ways. They can be formatted by conditional formatting, also in case of format strings, and also they can be used to format anything else, which is slightly third like, I know, but it's a little bit different. You will see. And there's a third step inside the calculation group that we really need to have in our minds. They're respecting data types. What I mean with that, if I would like to previously, before we had the dynamic formats of the measures, and we would like to create some specific format for measures, we would need to duplicate them or use a function called format, which would return the result inside the text. That's not something that we would like to have all the times, because if we are working with the numbers, we still would like to be able to sort them like a numbers. So we would need something that would be respecting the data types. But let's quickly look on these three categories a little bit more deeper. In case of their reusability, I would like to show it on little example. I have here the sum of table sales and of its column called quantity. My calculation group can completely override it with some another static measure, like replacing the sum by the average, or it can use my initial measure, so the sum sales quantity, inside some other expression, like inside a calculate dates year to date. And this can be aimed at any measure. So if I will be aware that I have here some specific DAX function that can be used only inside the calculation groups, it would really help me. So just before you're able to see the 4 specific DAX functions that are actually usable only inside the calculation groups. One is selected measure. This one reference the measure that is actually under calculation group and or okay, let's call it like that. Selected measure will take any measure that come across with our calculation group. So on this place will any measure will be placed. So it can be really dynamic in case of what measure we will put inside. So we can have just base measures like the sum, average, min, max, median, whatever, but just without anything else. Then we have the selected measure name. Selected measure name is a very interesting function because it's returning the name of actually selected measure. So the measure against our calculation group is aimed. So based on that, we can create some ifs or switches that can do something else if we have selected some specific measure. This can be pretty handy if you're creating some specific calculation groups that are here for dynamic formats in up on any measure. What I mean by that? If I would be using some specific name convention on the measures, on the measure names, like that first character of a name would be hashtag or percentage or anything else, I can be set upping the format for these measures directly by calculation groups based on their name. This can be pretty handy when I don't want to be setting the format for every single measure, and if I will be just following some name conventions. On the other hand, we have here the isSelected measure. I know, I've skipped one. I will be returning to that. But isSelected measure can somehow be used for something slightly similar as a selected measure, because isSelected measure will return true or false if you're aiming calculation groups against some specific measures. So it also can be used to set up different steps or different expression for different types of measures. I know I've skipped the selected measure format string, so I will be returning to that right now. This function will actually return the format string of actually aimed measure. So if it's a number, it will return the number string. If it's a percentage, it will return the percentage format string. And we can modify it. We can make it a little bit more appealing to create something better, or even completely override it. But of course, calculation groups can be used in very static way. So you can, of course, emit calculation group directly against some measure, or just drop this measure inside a calculation item which is inside the calculation group. And in that case, every measure will be overridden by this specific measure inside the item, or it will just make an addition into our other calculations. So it still can be usable even when it's in a static way. If I will try to demonstrate it on a little bit different or a little bit more imaginable case, let's say that I have here these three types of calculations. I have here the year-to-date calculation, last year calculation, and trailing 12 month. And in this case, it's aimed every single times against the sum sales quantity, so against our previous measure. But what if we don't have just this one base measure? So we don't have just a sum sales of quantity, but we also have an average or even a median on that. In that case, if we would need all these three types of other calculations, it will be plus 3 measures for each base measure. Altogether, it means that we would have 9 additional measures. Maybe you can say that, hey, but measures don't really count inside a model. we can have thousands of them. Yeah, you can, but everything that you will put inside your model have its own cost. And if you will have more than 1,000 measures, you will be you will start encountering some pitfalls of that, like that report, like a PBIX file, will start opening slowly. It will take much more time to create another measure, and from some point, like 10,000 measures, you will be able to see even the downfalls inside a Power BI service on a pre-rendering site of a report. So it's really great to create some patterns that can be created directly inside the calculation groups that we can use against our measures and not be creating another ones. So if we would return to our previous measures, we have here the same calculations, but we just replaced the base measure with a selected measure function. And now, if we would aim these items against some measure, the measure would be automatically taken and put it into the calculation, so it would fulfill what we need, so the reducing of additional measures. And in case of a formatability, yes, they really can be formatted. They can be formatted in many different ways, and it can create very interesting visualizations. I have here just few very simple of them. One like this. In this chart, we are able to see only the bars that are actually under the deviation, which is 5% under overall average, and only these columns are actually highlighted, and only for them the data labels are shown, which, as I said, is something where calculation groups can help, because they can help us override the format string of inserted measure and to show just the labels on the right places. That's something very handy. And on the other hand, it can also be updating them, just to adding another parts like these arrows up or down if between our years we've raised up or decreased our profit. And we can even say very quickly about how much percentage we've actually raised. But okay, let's say this is very hard for quick reading. I know that a row up is great, a row down also, but they're very flat and they're taking lots of attention. What we can do is a little bit modifying of all the chart and all the perspective, and we can of course create something like this. In this case, we are able to see the specific chart, which is just a column stacked chart, but everything what's up on the target is highlighted. Of course, the data labels have a different colors, and we can also see the additional percentage that are saying us how much we raised over the target, still by the calculation groups. In that case, if calculation groups can be used in something like this, or even used as a formatting for that, we cannot say that they can't be formatted. We can only say that, okay, they can, and they can create something very unique in case of Power BI if we would go besides the custom visuals, because what calculation groups are really great for is, of course, usage against native visuals and make them much better. Okay, but I've also said something about the respecting of the data types. If I would have data like this and I will need it in a 3 different types, like in a this one or this one or this one, previously I would need it to create the measure for all of them and set it up very precisely by a format function, or say set up it directly inside the format of each measure. That's not pretty nice, especially in case of that it will be adding another and another measures inside our model. Once again, calculation groups can fulfill that. I know some things changed. And now, these days, we can do something very similar inside the measures. We can have our dynamic format. And based on that, we can do absolutely same thing. It's here for last 1 or 2 months only. So it's pretty new. And it has one downfall against the calculation groups. You need to set it up against each measure separately. Calculation groups can be aimed against any measure. So you can prepare it just once and be not duplicating for all the measures. Of course, would be also great to be able to say something about the format string definition itself, because for someone it can look like black magic. So here you're able to see how it will look like if I will use some wildcards inside the formats, like D, which is for day, small m for months, and small y for year. Based on how many of them I will actually put inside the format, the result would look like a little bit differently. This also works for numbers, where we have, I would say, 4 specific wildcards. One is 0. It's an exact definition of a number. It means like that even if the inputted number doesn't have any place where this number is inside the format string, the 0 will appear here. On the other hand, we have here the dynamic wildcard for numbers, which is a hashtag. If the initial number don't have anything on displays, it won't be shown. So that's also pretty great to know that this is here. Of course, we have here some additions like a large M for millions, large K for thousands, etc. that can be used directly inside the format strings. But this is something that lots of people actually know. But lots of people actually missed that you can use formats also for definition if the number is a positive, negative, or a 0, and based on that returns completely different formats. And you can set it up very quickly just by something like this. And yeah, you can even use the emojis inside the format. But please don't do that on a production report unless you're trying to make it something more funnier. Of course, I can hear some, it would be maybe a question, if it's better to do some of these format definitions in the measures, or it's better doing it inside the tables on a base data. It depends. if we would be talking about the data that we would like to use for some axis or for some legends, etc., in that case, definitely it would be better to have it correctly set up inside the tables. But calculation groups are not aimable against the columns. They're aimable only against the measures, so against the value and value output. But I think it's a great time to jump into some demo, and I will be at least be able to show you some work with calculation groups. So I have here the PBX file, which is called showcase. Here I have very simple model. I have here the employees, the products, sales, and a date key. I also have here some table, but we will not need that. And I have here the measure table with some measures. I have here average quantity, total quantity, top product margin, and some measures that are just defining some colors. And I would like to show you at least some basic stuff that can be very quickly done with a calculation groups. So I will go into the report and I will add some chart. It can even be the column cluster chart. On the x-axis, I will drop the year and a month, and into the y-axis, I will drop the total quantity. Directly, it will show me that I have here inside my data just 1 year, but all data that are necessary. I will just need to sort them to make it look more properly. So by year, month, and ascending way. In this moment, I would like to see all the data labels. Why? Because now I would like to create a calculation group that will shows me only the top sales and the bottom sales, because I would like to be able to aim on the months where I was able to sell the top, and on the other hand, where I wasn't able to sell that much and in other months. This, at least a part of that, can be definitely done directly inside the measures. So let's try that. I will go for a measure and create a new one. How I will start with that will be that I will be starting with creating some colors that will turn the highest sold month into the green, the lowest one into the red, and the rest of them will actually be the gray ones. This can be actually pretty easy because I need to create some color of bars. After that, I will need to receive my all axis. So, okay, x-axis, and it's actually all selected date key month, because I would like to see just the month that I have here. So if I will be squeezing that on just a few months, or I will be selecting of them, I would like to be able to work with that in the same way. After that, I will grab the max from that. So I will do it directly against the total quantity and of course the min. By that, I will be able to receive the top selling point in a chart and the lowest selling point. Next to that, I will try to find out my actual state to be able to say if I'm on the same column like the max is or the minimum. So the X state and it will be also done by the total quantity. Then I will call for the return, and I will do just quick switch. So let's use a true act state. If it's a max, it will be, it will be the base green. If it's a min, it will be base red. In all other cases, we will need to have it inside the grayscale. This new measure can be directly called against the y-axis. So I will go for the columns, for conditional formatting, and for a field value where I can drop this color of bars. As you can see, it appeared instantly. So, okay, that's done. But how now we can modify the data labels? In this case, I would go for the calculation group. So let me open the tabular editor to create my calculation group. And yes, that's something that I didn't set. Calculation groups in these days cannot be created directly inside a Power BI desktop. You need to create them inside some other external tool, like in Tabular Editor. And
Hi, Steve. Sorry, just to jump in there very briefly. So we've had a comment from Pedro. They just mentioned that when you're writing the measures and any scripts, is it possible just to zoom in slightly, please?
Yeah, of course. I will. Sorry.
Fantastic. No problem at all. Thanks very much.
Okay. If I would like to go for tables, because I will need to create my calculation groups and I need to create them here inside the tables, I need just to click by right button of the mouse, say create, and the calculation group. It will create completely new calculation group, which we can call like data labels remover. And at the start of a name, I will also add this CG and underline, because I would like to have every single time calculation groups differentiable against all other tables. Because calculation groups unfortunately don't have their own icon. So it's very easy to miss them inside the model. So I will open the calculation group, go for calculation items, right click on them and say, hey, I need to create a new item. It seems like something fall off, at least from my side, so hopefully you're able to hear me. Can someone just agree?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Okay, so just the webcam fall off.
We can still see you okay as well at the moment, or I believe actually no, we've it seems like you've gone to a frozen screen.
Okay, it's finally appeared again.
Excellent.
Okay, sorry.
Excellent.
Maybe Steve, can we quickly ask you a question? Someone just asked about Tabular Editor. Bjorn is gone. Okay, he's back.
Okay.
So Judes have just asked. Oh, sorry, I should show it. That about Tabular Editor, will the free version be adequate, or will we need to have the paid version? I think to use the calculation groups.
I can assure you that you can do this also inside the free version. And if you would like to do it more, I will switch myself into the Tabular Editor too, to make it for you much more easier to be able to understand how you can do it inside that. So sorry, I will just grab the name of this calculation group.
Thank you.
I will close the Tabular Editor free. No, I don't want to save anything inside the model. let's open the version 2, which is the free one. I will go into the tables again, right-click on them, new, and the calculation groups again. It's completely the same steps. I will drop here the name, so the CG data labels remover, and I will go for my calculation items, because calculation groups itself actually do nothing. They would have just 2 columns, name and ordinal. And based on ordinal, the name are sorted. So we still need to create some magic inside the calculation group that will do what we would like to. And that's called a calculation item. So I will create a new calculation item, and we will call it like an high and low. I will try to zoom even the text here for you to be able to see there. And you can see that here inside the calculation item, we have some expression and format string expression. We maybe would like to respect all the calculation or of all the measures that are actually assigned into that, and we would just like to change their data labels. And if that's so, we need to not change the expression and just to allow our selected measure appear directly inside the expression without any addition or without any overriding of that. So we have it like that. But the data labels are actually managed in a way how the measure will be shown by their format string expression. So if I will switch to that, you can see that my DEX disappeared, but still it's down here inside the expression. So it actually disappeared to nowhere. We are inside another window where we can define our format string expression. And I can use here something very similar as I've done previously inside the creating the colors. I would go again for var x-axis, where I would go for all selected. It will be the date key and the month, because month is the lowest hierarchy level of a definition that we're using. Then the var, the max, which will be again max x, x-axis, and the selected measure. Even here inside the format string definition, we can grab our selected measure and be using that for anything we would like to. Besides that, we can also have the min with the minix, which will be completely same on the end. So let me just copy paste it. And the actual state. So the act state, which is just the selected measure. And on a return, we need to have in our mind that format string expressions have a string inside the name. Why I'm saying that so strangely like that? It's because we need to return a string. So even if you would be defining that directly without anything dynamic like this, you still need to put it here inside the double quotes to make it really a string. So I will go for a switch for a true for the act state, where I will say that if it's a max, I would go for some addition inside next to our measure and selected measure format string, which would return the format string of any measure that is appearing inside our calculation evaluation process. But what we would insert here? I would add here something funny. So let me find the emoji and put it here. I know now it looks very strangely, so hopefully it will be shown. And let's go for the act state, also for the min, and the selected measure format string. In this case, it's the lowest, so it wouldn't be something very happy, so it won't be any happy face, but it would be something like this. Still, we would need to return something for all other appearances, because every time we need to return something for format string. So I will just drop it the format string itself here, drop a Control S. So I will let it save it. I would go for a model or for my Power BI and hit the refresh button. Well, my calculation group just appeared as a table. And now I can use the name column inside the calculation group to actually apply my calculation item against this visual. And it can be done by different ways. You can use it in a different visual and just click. And after click, the interaction between visual will aim the calculation group against all other visuals on a page. And as you can see, after my click on a green bar, we're able to see the happy face. And on the red one, some sad face and very nervous one. But this is not a very nice way how to apply the calculation groups. But we can also apply them inside the slices directly to say, hey, now it's applied and it will be applied unless you will click somewhere else or to some other item. But still, if you would like to aim it our calculation group against one specific visual, we can do that directly by clicking on our visual, opening the filter, and applying the name inside the filter on this visual, and just selecting the item that we would like to appear. I just seen the question that the box with a character pick that I'm appearing is something built inside the Windows or a special app. It's built inside the Windows. You can do that by the Win button and the dot. Win plus dot equals this specific box. So, as you remember, I said that I would like to make these numbers disappear, and I would like to show only the numbers that are actually in a top bar and the lowest bar. What if I would go for the calculation group and I would change the selected measure for nothing? So Control S. Let's try it again. As you can see, nothing's happening. So no, if I will try use the space, they will be removed. But unfortunately, space will not work in every single time and will not work for every single visual. It's much more better to use some character map, which is also directly inside the windows. You can try to search it, and if you would go into 2/3 of a whole window, you will be able to find this dot. Go into row just above the dot and 2 squares to the right. This one, the left to right mark, will actually work in every single visual. You can just go for select and copy, go into our item, put it here, and drop Ctrl S. As you can see, it worked also. On the other hand, if you wouldn't like to be looking inside the character map and seeking for this special character, you can try to memorize something like Unicode 8200. This one will also work completely everywhere. So we were able, by calculation groups, very quickly changed from the data labels like we have at the start to this one. But what if I would remove the total quantity and I will put here the average quantity? Now our labels appeared on the right places, but on the other hand, we are not able to see the colors on the right bars. So maybe we would need to recreate our colors of bars inside other calculation groups to be able to replace these total quantity same dynamically as we have here inside our calculation, like for the data labels. So I would go for the color of the bars. I will go for tabular editor, and in this moment I will create a second one, which will be CG color bars. And here I would go for another item which will be called like green, red, gray scale. Here we can see that we have here the total quantity. So I will replace that by selected measure. And as you can see, we're actually replacing that inside the expression. So we will be overriding some measure. So I will just drop Ctrl S to save it. Oh, sorry, I've let the name still be here. So again, I would go for a refresh now, and I will add this CG color bars also to our visual. Everything disappeared. Why? Because in this moment, by this calculation group, we're actually overriding our measure of quantity. That's not great. We would like to create some exception where we will be not aiming calculation group like this against this average quantity. Or we can chain our calculation group with some specific other measure, like with a blank or something like that. So if I would go for the calculation inside the columns, I can still drop here the blank. Oh, I cannot. Why? Because even for defining the colors, we still need something that will be returning at least some color that Power BI can use. So the blank color can be just the white also. So the blank color now finally appears here, and we will make the exception that this overriding measure will be used only against against this blank measure. So if is selected measure, I would go for the measure itself. I will grab this blank color. I will try to modify that and say that, okay, on the other hand, if this one is not a selected one, we will return the selected measure. So still, we will be returning at least something. So let's override it. We have our bars back, but somehow, as you can see, they appear all in a grayscale. That's a large pitfall also of the calculation groups, because in this moment, they are directly aimed against the dynamic measure or against the measure called blank color that is here. But they are also aimed against the average quantity, and the selected measure will return only one of them. It will every single time be directly against the one which is actually under the evaluation process in that time. So if the blank color is evaluated, in that case, every single time our item is aimed just against that. And we're not able to say that it will be also aimed dynamically against the average quantity here. Wow, that's a little bit harsh. That's a little bit heavy. But that's something where people actually says that calculation groups cannot be formatted. Of course they can. But in that case, it's not that much. It's not that much dynamic because, of course, every single time we still can aim them directly against some average quantity. So dynamically, also statically edit some measure inside of that, and it will appear. So calculation groups are great in case of eliminating repetitive steps inside our calculations. But once you will start combining more calculation groups together, the things will start getting heavier and heavier and heavier, because calculation groups also are sometimes are evaluated one after another, and that can make them very heavy to set up them properly, how they should be sorry, I'm missing the word. How they should force be or be sending the evaluation between each other. How we can set up which one will be actually evaluated before another one is by the calculation precedence. By that, we can say that this one will be actually evaluated every times before the color bars. So we can set it up behind itself to set it up properly. And on the other hand, the calculation groups has some another pitfalls, and not in just case of developers, but in case of users. When I will return into the presentation for a quick moment, I can say from many encounters with a user that are or were trying to understand the calculation groups, and I'm talking especially about the end users that would just like to create the report up on our models. For them, it will be very hard to understand how the calculation works, especially when they looks like just like other tables. So they can be very confusing. Of course, calculation groups can be very focused on creating one specific visual. And in that case, if we would use them against some another visual for what they didn't was created, their result can be incredibly strange and can return very different result that we would expect. And also one very large pitfall these days is that they are not editable directly inside the Power BI desktop, and you need some another tool for that. Mostly people have the issues with one of these questions. How to apply them to only to one measure inside the visual. Of course, calculation groups can be changed directly just with one measure, and it can be done by the selected measure or by creating another measure and using the treat as. Besides that, sorry, it's not clicking. Yep. Another question can be, how can I distinguish from typical tables when they have the same icon? Mostly just by names these days. So it's very great to have some name convention that can be used on these calculation groups for us to be able to diversify them against other tables. And why do they show something completely different in another chart? That's what I said previously, that they can, when they are aimed to a different chart, beside that there was created for, they can return very, very strange returns. But to all these questions, there can be, of course, the answer. So for the first one, if we have more measures in a visual, it's not possible to select which measure will be affected. I mean, it's not selectively doable directly on the measures itself. It needs to be done by some additions inside the calculation groups or the items itself, or through the treat-as function on a different measure. That would appear the ability of transform the measure to our measure from the calculation group. Also, in case of how to distinguish them, as I said, this moment only by the name convention. It's the easiest way how to do that. And what's the very, very needed, if you have some calculation groups or measures that are returning something that is created just for one purpose, and it's not the generic, it should be hidden. It should not be seenable in the eyes of the end user or the report builders that will not have ability to go to peek on your docs and find out how you're dealing with all the results. And of course, would be very great to make these calculation groups private, so they will also not appear even inside the inside the IntelliSense itself. That's something that I think is necessary to be said on over calculation groups. And in this moment, I would like to thank you for the attention. You can also see here the QR codes if you would like to stay in touch. I have here the LinkedIn and the Twitter. And my special thanks go to organizers of this awesome community. So thank you, everyone. And I'm returning the word back to Leon and Pragati.
Steve, thank you very much. That was a truly riveting session. Calculation groups, as you mentioned, open up so many pathways within Power BI, and it's great to see them at play there. We've had some fantastic comments coming in throughout the session, so I would like to thank you very much for joining us today, and also apologize that we got so caught up in the name change to Fabric that I didn't go through your introduction, so I'm very sorry for that.
It's okay. I've just shown the QR code for the whole presentation, so people can even download it from a GitHub repository.
Perfect. Let me just change the screen over so we can make sure people can get that properly. Excellent. Pragati, your thoughts? That's truly amazing session.
Yeah, I think, Steve, it was really nice to. I think the way you explained calculation groups was pretty great. I mean, I haven't seen anyone else before explaining calculation, because you were like with a good pace. So, you were speaking clearly and, pointing in the right direction. So I think it was really a good session for me to go back to the calculation group concept. Sorry, but I don't use them much, but I have used them in very rare cases. So yeah, it was really nice to go back and see everything back. I think I'm more like a field parameter person, but yeah, sorry about that. It was good to see the calculation.
There's a great place for both, and we've had some really good comments coming in as well. So a lot of people saying thanks, great work. Fernando mentions thank you as well. Thank you, Steve, as well, from Pedro. It's good to see Jude's ice cream back with us. Now, Jude did make a point, and Pragati, I'll put this on screen for you to go for it. That's okay.
Yeah. I think this was more regarding the date format thing that we talked about in the starting of your session. So Jude's saying, like, for me, perhaps the date format representation would be normally provided by the date dimension columns rather than measures. So yeah.
Yeah, that definitely is true, and that's also why I then need to say that usually when we would use that for some legends or axis, it would be inside the dimension itself. We were just talking about the measures and nothing else.
Thank you so much.
Perfect, thank you. And Jude also mentions that they love the ice creams as well.
Yeah, I loved it as well. It was pretty good. Happy and sad smiley based on how the sales have been. So yeah, that was pretty good.
Fantastic.
I'm super happy that you've enjoyed it, and thank you so much for having me here. For me, it was a huge pleasure and a huge opportunity.
Perfect. We'd love to have you back with us again, Steve. And obviously, we'll just go ahead and close out today's session now. So with that being said, it's been fantastic to have everybody with us today. It's a pleasure to be with you after all of the amazing news that's come out of Build and is still coming out at Build. So continue to watch this space, and we look forward to coming back to you in the future under our new name, which is the Microsoft Fabric UK User Group.
Thank you, everyone. And please don't forget to sign up for the Fabric free trial, because that's the time. This is the time you can actually start playing around without paying for it. Okay. So you get a 60-day trial. Go and sign up for it and play around with the new things that Microsoft has just announced. And yeah,
exactly.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Thank you, everybody. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us at the Microsoft Fabric UK User Group.